Pay close attention in today's video because we're going to analyze Ether and discuss what's most likely to happen with it before the end of the year and before the end of the alt season, which we're currently experiencing. So, without further ado, let me tell you that this is a technical analysis, not a fundamental one. We're going to look not only at the Ether to dollar chart, but also Ether to Bitcoin to see whether it might be a better investment than Bitcoin over the coming months or not. So, without further delay, let's get started with the video and begin with Ether versus the dollar. Currently, where do we stand with Ether to dollar? Well, if you take a look, we've been climbing like crazy since April, from around $1,400 in just about 3 months. And look here, notice that in just 126 days, we've gone up 209%. Ether is clearly in an uptrend and is clearly outperforming Bitcoin. That means it's rising much more than Bitcoin is. Not only that, but as I mentioned, this is going to be a bit more of a long-term analysis. We can see that on the weekly chart, we've broken through a hugely important resistance, the $4,000 for $1,100 zone. Why is it so important? Take a look, because we hit a peak there in March 2024. We also hit a peak in December 2024, and it's the area we've just broken through right now. And Ether is on its way to all-time highs. On its way to all-time highs that we're going to reach, well, really soon. Okay, we're very close. The all-time highs are around $4,800. Ether only needs to go up about 13%. If Ether wanted to, it could do it in half a week, since even if you look here, last week we went up more than 24% in just 1 week. You already know we're in an alt season. We're in a market moment where everything is going up, and going up a lot and very fast. You have to keep in mind that even during alt season, we also have corrections, and sometimes significant corrections. What happens is that these are quick corrections. They usually come very fast, last a week or two, and then from there we start exploding again and again, just taking off. And you also have to keep in mind that the end of a cycle usually brings very, very violent moves, and things can turn around really quickly, okay? But aside from that, what we can say about Ether right now is that we're going to find ourselves in a range between $4,800 and $4,100, which would be the area of the all-time high and the high of 2024, which we hit 2 or 3 times. And right now, this $4,100 zone is going to be a major support for Ether. But in any case, we're not here to look at that range where we might find ourselves for a few weeks. The important thing here is to keep in mind what will happen with Ether when it breaks its all-time high. That's the key to today's video and the key we need to learn and keep in mind. So, let's take a look. We're going to use a tool that I use a lot, especially for these moments when we break through an all-time high. We won't know where the resistances are because, well, the price has never gone that far before, but there is a really good tool, which is the Fibonacci extension. You draw a Fibonacci from the previous bear market, in this case from the all-time high area, from November 2021 to the bottom that Ether hit in June 2022, basically a year and a half of decline, and we can see something very important. Here you get the Fibonacci extensions, and as you know, I usually mark the 1.618 area, the 1.23, 1.38, 1.5, then the golden pocket Fibonacci extension 1.782, and well, even further out too, right? In any case, if we look here, extremely important zones for the price of Ether will be, once we surpass the all-time highs, there will be practically nothing stopping us until the $7,200 area. I'll say it again, from $4,800, when we break through this area, we're going to do it with a lot of strength, with a lot of force, because, again, it's been 4 years since we've seen these levels, okay? So, when we break through this area, we probably won't face major resistance, maybe a little bit around the $5,000 zone, right? Around there, but we really won't have significant resistance until we reach the $7,225 area. And the million-dollar question is, does Ether have to stop at $7,225? Well, I don't think so. It's very likely it'll keep going higher. And this higher could very well be the $9,300 area. For me, there's a strong chance that Ether will reach this $9,300 zone, although it's true that there are even higher levels above that, the $11,450 area, and then the zone I really don't think we'll ever surpass, which would be the $15,000 mark. It's still possible to see Ether at $15,000. It's still possible to see Ether triple from its current price to reach the $14,000 or $15,000 zone. I'll repeat. In just about 120 days, we've more than doubled. We've done a 2.3x. That's 230%. Basically, we're talking about doing another 300% from the current price. That's still a possibility. In any case, for me, the most likely scenario is simply that Ether stays between $9,366 and $14,000 or $15,000. This whole area here is very likely where Ether will hit its market top, and from that point on, we could see corrections. But anyway, as we say, basically, this will happen when Ether reaches a new all-time high. Remember, we're talking about between 120% and 230% profit from the current point. That's what we're projecting. In any case, if we want Ether to go up between 120% and 230% more from the current price, Ether not only has to be bullish against the dollar, which it clearly is, but it also has to be bullish against Bitcoin. So let's take a look at the analysis, in this case, of Ether against Bitcoin. So let's get right to it. The first important thing to consider is what would happen if Ether had the same market capitalization that Bitcoin currently has. Well, if all the money currently in Bitcoin moved to Ether, basically Ether would be worth about 4.6 times more than it is now, which would be around $20,000. So obviously, we really doubt that Ether will surpass the $20,000 mark because it's not going to get all the market capitalization that Bitcoin has right now. That's not going to happen. But what if it did? What could Ether actually do? It could reach half the market capitalization that Bitcoin has right now. As you know, this is just basic math, right? If it gets 100% of Bitcoin's money, it's worth $20,000. If it gets half of Bitcoin's money, how much could Ether be worth, right? Around the $10,000 mark. I repeat, the $9,000 to $10,000 range is very, very extremely possible, especially as more and more money starts flowing into the market in the coming months. But in any case, the $9,000 or $10,000 range is quite likely. From there on, between $9,000 and $14,000, you have to be very careful because there's always the possibility that at any moment we could already be entering a bear market. I repeat, the bear market is going to come like it does every 4 years. I've been here since 2016, and I can tell you every cycle people say, there won't be a bear market. There's always a bear market. So, in the range between 9,000 and 14,000, it also makes sense for us to wait for Ether in terms of market cap. So now, let's finally take a look at the Ether versus Bitcoin chart. And this chart is very interesting because it stayed really bullish from 2015 until around 2017, but from 2017, 2018 onwards, Ether has been a bit more bearish against Bitcoin. But something very interesting has happened over the last few weeks. When Ether hit bottom in the area, and you can see it here on the chart, okay? Ether hit bottom around the $1,400 area, and it also hit bottom against Bitcoin, okay? Remember, this chart isn't comparing against the dollar, but against Bitcoin, and if this chart is bullish, it means Ether is going up more than Bitcoin. And if this chart is bearish, it basically means Ether is dropping more than Bitcoin, or in this case, rising less than Bitcoin. Okay. But anyway, since we're in a bullish trend, let's talk about gains. If this were bearish, but the chart against the dollar was bullish, it would mean it's going up less than Bitcoin. And if this is bullish, it means it's going up more than Bitcoin. So knowing that, and knowing that we've hit bottom in the same area where we hit bottom in 2019, and that from the moment we hit bottom in 2019, Ether revalued against Bitcoin by 420%. We're talking about during the bull market from 2019 to 2021, Ether went up 4 times more than Bitcoin did during that period. And what we're seeing here is that if you look, Ether from the moment we hit bottom has already appreciated against Bitcoin by more than 110%. So what can we say about this? Well, clearly we've hit a hugely important support. We've reached a very, very key area. And obviously we're going to see pullbacks within this upward move we're having. But we expect that at the very least, Ether against Bitcoin will reach the 0.049 zone. This whole area here is extremely important, and it's very likely we'll revisit it. mainly because we have major resistances. If Ether against Bitcoin breaks above the 0.049 zone, it will become even more bullish, and we could expect increases that would at least reach the 0.065 area. Basically, we're talking about Ether rising between 40 and 90% more than Bitcoin from the current price. And that also fits with what we were telling you. If we expect Bitcoin, for example, to go up by, say, 30% from the current price before it tops out, in this case, we would be expecting double the increase, not 30%, but 60%, okay? And just so you get an idea, my cycle target for Bitcoin would be around the $180,000 area, which would mean that Bitcoin could still have about 50% more to go up. So, for Ether, we're expecting at least double that increase, which would mean that Ether from the current point should go up at least, I'll say it again, 100 to 120%, up to around $9,200. It all fits together with the same idea, that Ether against Bitcoin reaches the area of the 200-week moving average on the weekly chart and gets to the range of 0.056 to 0.065, this whole area around here. If Ether reaches this area, it would mean that Ether against the dollar should also easily reach the $9,000 zone. Obviously, if we hit this area and Ether keeps rising against Bitcoin, in that case we wouldn't just expect Ether at $9,000, but it could even go further and reach the next resistance zone we've mentioned, which would be around $14,000. It seems a bit far-fetched to me, but it's still not out of the question, especially considering what we're seeing here. And as I know that a lot of people haven't experienced an alt season and don't know what the last weeks of an alt season are like, but I repeat that in previous cycles we've seen absolutely wild moves, basically within just a week. In the last weeks of an alt season, every week you see increases of 30–40%. In just 2 or 3 weeks, you can really reach these prices, okay? So stay very alert, keep a close eye on the final phases of a bull run, and in any case, here you basically have my clear, straightforward targets for what I expect to happen with Ether over the next few months until the end of the alt season, which we're just starting to enter right now. So, above all, here's my recommendation. Trying to short coins that are this bullish is a problem. So be extremely, extremely careful about looking for shorts in coins that just keep going up and up and up. And basically, be very cautious with this kind of movement. I'll make a specific video talking about when I think the alt season will end and when I think the bull run will finish, because it's probably going to be at the end of this very year. And well, we'll be getting ready on the channel for that bear market, so we don't lose money during the bear market, start shorting coins, and basically start making profits on the way down as well. So, well, that's pretty much the video. I hope you liked it and found it interesting. Let's go straight to the recap of today's video. As you can see, you now have the resistance levels very clear. It's extremely important to keep in mind the resistance levels we'll be facing ahead, especially at levels we've never visited before, like the $4,800 area, which would be an all-time high, $7,200, $9,200, and then, for example, the $11,400 and $14,000 zones. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen with Ether. If you think it's going to keep going up all the way to the $20,000 area. If you think it's going to surpass Bitcoin's market cap, which I doubt. And well, let's see what you think about the coin. Remember, in the portfolio we have on the channel, it's the coin we're holding the most, so these kinds of moves are super, super good for us. So, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you liked the video, subscribe, give it a like, and sign up below. There's a link in the description for BitGet, which is where you can trade Ether with all of us in the private Crypto Luke Trading Hub community. So that's it. See you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.